What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
Can you guys believe we're on episode 25?
Woo.
That's pretty good. I'm not even gonna lie. That's pretty good.
Yeah, so that means we've been doing this for 25 weeks because we do an episode a week. Well,
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
I mean, it's kind of a lie because there was a couple weeks that we had vacation, so we had to do 3
but
episodes.
we still posted.
I was going to say, but we would have
once a week. Yeah.
done
So
once
we're
a
like
week.
we're almost 6 months in.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Can you believe it? And we keep getting more downloads, more follows, more listens. So it's pretty cool.
And if any of you who I've personally told about the podcast and listen to it now, you guys keep giving me, well, first of all, hello, but also if you guys have people that you want us to research and look into, text me and let me know.
Please, because here's where the problem's coming into play. I'm going to share with you really quick my frustration with this week's episode and why I'm frustrated. I'm not frustrated about the episode, but let me tell you what led up to this episode. So on the other podcast, on Fatal Blend, it's very simple. I have 2 books that are 150 serial killers in each book. I literally randomly flip it open and do research on that person. Very simple. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of true crime books. Actually, only like 1. And it's not a bunch of true crimes. It's about one specific crime, right? And then, of course, we don't want to do ones that are unsolved. And so that takes a bunch away. So what I typically do, because like I said in the last podcast, I genuinely love researching the older the crime, the better, because you get more information. So when I start to research, because I don't have somebody on my brain, I will go in and type like a Google research from like crime solved. I put in crimes that were solved from 1880 to 1970 or 1960, right? Like I'll pick this time frame, and every fucking time it is all these unsolved ones. And I'm like, no, I want the ones that have been solved. So finally, last week when I was researching for this particular episode, I found somebody and I was like, oh, and I was reading like a little snippet and I was like, perfect. I start doing research and come to find out, no, the crime was not solved. And by the way, I was literally halfway through an hour and a half documentary. So I was listening to this documentary and researching it. And I was reading through one of the documents and I was like, motherfucker, this is not solved. It's not solved. So I'm like, okay, so stop. So I literally took like almost an hour of time just starting the research and I had to pull the plug on that. So then I start searching again. I found somebody else and I was like, yes. I type in the research. There was literally nothing about this crime but the crime itself. So it would have been like 5 minutes and that would have been it. So I was like, okay, that's not going to work. So I find another one and I'm like, this is the one. Again, not fucking solved. I mean, it was solved, but then the person that they claimed did it was found not guilty and they came out and said later, like, yeah, we're pretty sure it wasn't that person. So I was like, okay, I'm not doing that either. So I went through a whole entire day of research without actually finding the person. And so it is hard to find the true crime ones because I try really hard to find ones that we don't hear about every day. I try to find the ones that have a lot of research. The one we're talking about today, I actually got from one of my Alcatraz books. And so that's kind of what I'm going to do for right now is
I'll say if you guys have any books too.
Do you have any book recommendations of like multiple true crime things? And I am not 100%.
Because if it's serial killer, it'll go on Fatal Blend. So even if you message it, like to us, if we see it's a serial killer, you'll hear it on Fatal Blend, not on this podcast.
Well, and I'm not 100% opposed to the non-solvable, the ones that are not solved, but I would much prefer not to. There are so many crimes that have happened in our lifetime and before our lifetime that were solved that it's just, I'm having a hard time I can find them, but it takes a hell of a lot of legwork just to find the one person that I'm going to research for this each week. And so I do have 2 books that are from Alcatraz. The problem with the Alcatraz ones is what people don't know about Alcatraz is a lot of the people who were in Alcatraz weren't there for like murder. They were there for like tax evasion or like theft.
Yeah, that's what we learned when we went to
Yeah,
Alcatraz. It was like you thought that was like the worst of the worst criminals.
Yeah.
And really, push comes to shove,
No.
some of their actual crimes
was
were
escaping
like,
prison.
Really?
And so they got sent there because they escaped other prisons. So it's like, I don't.
What was the saying?
Oh God, what was the saying?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically it was something along the lines of
when you break the law, you go to jail. When you break the prison rules, you go to Alcatraz,
that's what
or something like that. And so it's like, it's hard,
which makes sense. A lot of them went to a prison first, and
all of them,
jail, whatever,
all of them,
and then went to Alcatraz. You don't just straight shot
every
there.
person in Alcatraz was previously in a different prison. They never got sent straight to Alcatraz. So it's hard because some of those people I will still research them, but some of them will not have murders under their belt. It'll literally just be like a crime that they did and then escaping. And so it just gets hard. It was really it was hard. And my brain was, I was like, I need a brain break because I've spent literally all day researching and I still don't have somebody. Finally, I found this person that we're going to talk about and it's fine. But even this guy, it's like, I don't have like a ton of information about him, but he does a bunch of different things, which leads up to him going to Alcatraz. And anyways, yeah. So if you have any suggestions or things that you think would be cool to research, hit us up, DM me on Instagram or TikTok or on X, or email us at crimebpodcast@gmail.com and send me some recommendations, because I can do the research 100%, but it does make my life a lot easier if I have kind of an idea where I'm starting from. I have found a couple of books like on Amazon and stuff that are massive, like encyclopedia type books with true crimes in them. The problem with those is I can get those, but the problem with those is a lot of them are serial killers. So it's like, I'm trying to find the right thing. Cause I mean, we could do John Benet Ramsey, but that's unsolved. And it's been done like a million times. So it's like, I don't want to do all the crimes that everybody has seen. And then sometimes when you find crimes, there's nothing about it. So you can't, it's just really whatever. But at the end of the day, I did find this one. Okay, so we will get into this week. We are talking about a man named John Giles. Now, John is he's an extensive criminal. And he actually, he did quite a lot of crimes. He ended up going into Alcatraz, and he's actually famous for trying to escape Alcatraz. Like, that's what, even though he's got crimes and things that he did, what people recognize him as is one of the 16 people who tried to escape.
16 or 17 people.
He is one of them who tried to escape Alcatraz. So we'll get into it. So John was born February 16th, 1895 in Elgin, Tennessee. Now, he was moved to Washington State. I didn't do it on purpose. It's another Washington thing.
What the fuck?
I don't know.
I know he's not from here, but do we just breed?
I feel like we do. So yeah, I don't mean to do Washington State, but he moved to Washington State when he was a kid. And his father was a sawmill worker, which makes sense because there are a lot of sawmills in Washington State because we do breed like trees, like crazy people out here. So
Pac Northwest, man. We are
the tree capitals.
Yeah.
He was the youngest of 3 boys, and he was said to be extremely smart. Also, I got a little, if you have not listened to the previous episode, then you won't understand it. But there is a weird fucking connection. This was weird. A weird connection between last episode and this one. So I'll remind you. But anyways, he was said to be very fucking smart. Now, he was so much smart that he actually skipped a bunch of grades in school. He ends up being a junior in high school at the age of 12. So that's young. Now, state records did show that his mother was confined to a state mental hospital for several years. So she had some issues, and his parents actually were said to have a really rocky relationship. They would separate multiple times, get back together, fight, separate. And then finally, when John is 15, they actually get divorced. And so I don't know if they both stayed in Washington. I don't know. But at the time he was living in Washington. Now, he also started to do some petty theft type stuff when he was a teenager. He robbed saloons. And he also carjacked multiple cars because, again, you have to remember he was born in 1895. So when he's a teenager, it's the early 1900s. And when he's in his 20s, it's still, you're in the early 1900s. And so they had saloons and things like that. So he would...
Real saloons. Not your bullshit saloons.
For reals. Real fucking saloons. So he does all that stuff. Well, at the age of 15, he ends up leaving home because, again, remember, he was 12 years old as a junior in high school. So at 15, he leaves home and he actually decides he's going to work as a surveyor's assistant with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. And he actually works there for 4 years. So he works there till he's 19. And this is actually located all the way up at the northern part of Washington, like very close to Vancouver, British Columbia. So he is not Vancouver, but British Columbia. And so he is like really kind of close to the border between Canada and Washington. And so that's what he does till he's 19. So he does also, because he's a career criminal, he ends up with a list of aliases. He was known at one point as Jack Sinclair. He was known as Basil Haig, and he was known as J.K. Laird. So he has 3 different names. This will kind of give you an idea of the fact that he was a career criminal. Now, in 1915, he is convicted of robbery, and he is incarcerated in the Walla Walla State Penitentiary. Can you believe in 1915 Walla Walla State Penitentiary
I didn't even know
existed?
that. No.
I know, right? I'm like,
I'm going to look up, keep talking, but I'm going to look up when it actually opened as a Walla Walla State Penitentiary.
Yeah, Walla Walla State. You could just put Walla Walla State
I can't
Prison.
say that word.
Which again, Walla Walla State Penitentiary is located in Washington State. And it's like it's one of the bigger state prisons. And it's the one that, like, if you have anybody who lives in Washington and goes to Walla Walla State, it's like, it's the hard times. Anyway, so when
1886 is when the prison was built.
And can you believe it's still here?
And it was originally called the Washington Tutorial Prison.
Of course
it
was.
Tutorial.
Oh.
Territorial Prison.
Of course. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So Washington Territorial Prison.
Isn't that crazy? And it still to this day is an actual functioning prison.
The construction began in 1886. The first prisoner arrived in 1887.
Damn. See?
Wild.
History.
They had bucket toilets.
That's gross. So 3 years after he goes to prison. So again, he went to prison in 1915. 3 years later, he is actually pardoned and he is let out of prison. Now, the reason they believe he was pardoned, so he's pardoned in 1918. They believe he was pardoned because at this time, the United States had just entered World War I. And the whole pardon was simply because they wanted him to enlist in the military to help fight the World War I. He did not do that. He said, maybe next time. And he just doesn't do it. And it wasn't like drafting, like they weren't talking about a draft, because I don't even know if drafts existed in World War I. I think that was World War II when they started drafts. But he literally was like, no, I don't want to be in the military, but hey, thanks for letting me out of prison. And he moves on with his life. So in September of 1918, he had just barely gotten out of prison. He decides to board a mail train that's leaving from Everett, Washington. These mail trains back in the day, I mean, that's literally how your mail was delivered. And it was full of mail, but it was also full of things like checks, money orders, bonds, war bonds, liberty bonds, which are all things that are valuable. So that's why he gets on this train.
I'm a fucking idiot because you said mail train and I definitely thought it was just like a train full of guys.
Guy train.
But like that, I thought it was just like,
it was a train
like
just
back
for boys.
in the day, like, you know how like women couldn't vote, like things like that. I thought it was like just for the guys.
No, like snail mail.
I
Like,
promise I'm not an idiot, people. I have my bouts.
well,
I promise I'm not that big of an idiot.
So police actually said that his crime, the way that he pulled off this crime that he committed, was done in a very true Wild West style, because he boards this he sneaks onto this train, goes on, finds suitcases, fills the suitcases with Liberty bonds, checks, and money orders, and then like Wild Wests his ass out of there. And like off he goes. Now he does this, he doesn't get caught for this. So like that's why they're like, no, it was like a real like for reals. Like I almost wonder when they say Wild West, I feel like there had to have been a horse involved. You know, like a bandit on a train. That's what it makes.
It's like the fucking tumbleweed.
That's what
going across the screen.
That's what it makes me feel like. Cause I'm like, what are you talking about, Wild West? But okay, sure. So he gets, or maybe he gets on with the bandana over his fucking mouth, and he's like, stick them on.
The most wanted posters, Bandit Bill or whatever the fuck it is. Yeah.
So anyway, so he does that. Well,
hey, Washington was a very like, I mean, even you said where you used to live in Washington, like when you moved there in the 80s, I was going to say it was Cowboy Central.
Cowboy Central.
So it's not like Washington is always like city, right? It's,
No, it very well could have been, and he could have done that. I mean, that could be what they're saying.
Early 1900s. It wouldn't shock me.
No. Now there is a point where he decides that, you know what? I don't want to sit here and rob these suitcases off of these trains and try to get these money orders and these checks. Instead, I think I'm going to just kidnap wealthy men who live in Portland, Oregon, and hold them for ransom. So what does he do? He puts this plan into action. Part of his plan was he would go to the homes of these men, kidnap them. Then he would bring them. So for those of you who don't know the lay of the land, Oregon and Washington obviously border each other. Portland, Oregon, it borders Vancouver, Washington. They're
like
very
a 10-minute
They're
drive
like very close to each other
over the border.
And so he decides that he's going to go into Vancouver, Washington, and he's going to pick out a heavily wooded area. And his plan is basically he's going to kidnap these guys, bring them over to this heavily wooded area, tie them up. Actually, I think he probably had like a tent or something, but tied them up there and just leave them there until he got the money. He did not plan on killing them. This wasn't like a really like crazy murder scheme. He really truly just wanted money. He spent a lot of time planning all this stuff. And then he decides, okay, I've got the plan. I know what I'm going to do. So now I'm going to start collecting information about the people in Portland, the wealthiest men in Portland, and I'm going to create a list of the wealthiest men. And I'm just going to start from the top and go down and kidnap one at a time. Get the money, release them, go to the next one. He also decides that part of his plan is that when he goes to kidnap them, this is fucking wild. He would walk to their door, knock, knock, knock. They open the door and he would hand his kidnapped victim a note that he had typed up. And he had already typed it up. He had typed up multiple of these notes. Now the note says, I have you covered with my pistol. I am armed to the teeth and my Confederates have surrounded the house, which is also not true, by the way. If you make an outcry, move, or menace me in any way, I shall kill you and any member of your family who may appear. We want $50,000. You can pay this sum or not, just as you like. If you wish to pay, it will be necessary for you to accompany me. You must do that, however, without exciting suspicion. A hint to the servants or one of your family will be sufficient notice for me to shoot everyone in sight. Read this thoroughly until you fully understand it, meanwhile remaining absolutely motionless. So his
First of all, why the fuck is this like a goddamn book? Most fucking ransom notes are like, give me 10 G's or they
That's
die.
not a ransom note. That's what he gives the kidnap victim when he walks into the house. Or when he gets to their door. When he gets to the man that he wants to kidnap, he literally hands him the note and stands there. The man then reads the note and can't let anybody know that he's under
apparently
kidnapping.
reads the book.
And he's telling him, you need to pay me $50,000. And if you choose to pay it.
Which 50 grand, first of all, 50
for back
grand
then,
still is a lot.
Yeah.
Like to me,
so
it's
he
a lot,
said,
but like,
you need to pay $50,000. And if you choose to pay that, you have to come with me. You have to come with me to pay me the $50,000. And I think what he meant was, you have an option. You can come with me and give me 50 grand and I'll take you to where you need to go. Or I'm going to take you and your family's got to give me money. Okay?
Right.
Then, so he does that. That's what his plan is. And then his other thing is then after the guy agrees, because he just thinks they're going to agree to just like walk out the door with him. Then he decides, I'm going to leave a note for the family. And the note is basically a note.
This is more like the ransom, what they would consider a ransom
Yes.
note.
So
Okay.
he would leave a note to them that basically encourages them highly to pay this amount of money because if not, the man, whoever it was that he took, will be killed. Now, he would tell them also, it is in your best interest to keep the kidnapping a secret. Do not contact police. Do not bring in anybody outside of who is
sheriff.
Part of this house. His reason for doing this, and I quote, this is what he said. It's not that we fear any immediate trouble from the law, nor its stupid upholders, but because we do not care to bring needless competition to our profession by the attracting of mediocre bandits to this essentially easy form of robbery. So his reason for not wanting them to contact police or anybody else is he didn't want somebody else to come along and go, well, goddamn, that guy is kidnapping for 50 grand. Well, I'm going to start kidnapping too because the way he's doing it is so fucking perfect. Nobody's going to know.
But I think it's funny that all of his notes say we, us, our, like makes it seem like there's
more
than
because he's
just
wanting
him.
to make it seem like it's just
right.
It's not. I mean, it's not. It's him. He's doing it.
Right. I just think that's interesting.
But I want you to take note of how perfect he thinks he is. He's creating the most.
I already fucking know where this is going.
He's creating the most perfect kidnapping.
Because he's so smart. He wants to fucking have the blah blah. Oh my god. I was trying really hard to sit here when you said, think about our last episode. And I'm really trying to think because we've done so many, like we just said, episode 25.
Yeah.
So I'm like, fuck, which one was that?
Leopold and
Because
Loeb.
I'll be completely honest. I don't listen to the final because we do it right here. So like, but anyways, I'm sitting there and I'm like, what is she talking about? And then as soon as you said that he was super fucking smart, I was like, this motherfucker's going to try to perfect the perfect crime.
Yep. And his is a perfect kidnapping.
What a bitch.
Okay. And he's done all these things and he's got it super
perfect
planned.
kidnapping, but he gives them a book to read.
He's got a perfect plan. Now, during this time, he also has a girlfriend and her name is Augusta Carlson.
Okay. It's an interesting name.
Now, she is a nurse and she's well fucking aware of what Richard is doing. She knows.
Wow. Fuck you.
Uh-huh. So maybe he was really saying we because it was the two of them. But she didn't actively get involved in any of his kidnappings. But she knew what his plan was because he told her because they lived together. They'd only known each other, by the way, for like 3 weeks. But she was smittenly in love with him.
That's also the early 1900s. I swear
feel
to
like
God,
that happens all the time.
They'd
I know.
be with each other for a month and they
Yep.
were married and popping out babies for 20 fucking million years.
Yes. So she knows his plans. Now on November 19th, 1918, Giles and his girlfriend, they get into the car and they decide today's the day.
They Bonnie and Clyde the shit, don't they?
No, they don't. No, they don't. They decide today's the day. He's like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to put my kidnapping into action. I'm going to create the perfect kidnapping crime and I'm going to walk out of this thing as a fucking millionaire. She's like, cool, let's go. So she gets in the car.
So yes, it is we.
She doesn't help with anything. She's just along for the ride. So he gives her this list.
She's an acquaintance at this point.
Yeah, she is. She is. Accomplice, not an acquaintance. Okay, so he hands her this list. Okay, and this list is the list that he had created of all the rich, wealthy men in Portland. And he's like, go to the top one. Tell me the address. So she gives him the address. They go to the door, knock on the door, knock on the door, knock on the door. He's not home. Fine. Give me the next one on the list. Not home. Give me the next one on the list. He goes through 3 more people. So a total of 4 houses he drives to this night, trying to find the wealthy man he's going to kidnap. None of them answer their door to him. Whether they're home or not, I have no idea, but no, he's not there. So now he's mad and he's frustrated. So he takes Carlson, which is his girlfriend. He takes Carlson back over to his Vancouver hiding spot. And he's like really frustrated. He's pacing around. He's like, I was ready. Like, this was the night. Perfect kidnapping. And it's been ruined because these people aren't home. And he's like, fuck it. I'm not ending the night. I'm not ending the night like this. I'm going to do something. And so they get back into his car, drive literally like 2 minutes. And they cross over the bridge that connects Portland to Vancouver. And he drives over the bridge and then stops like at the end of the bridge, puts on a wig and a Charlie Chaplin mustache and leaves his girlfriend in the car. And he runs back onto the bridge because at the time it was a toll bridge. And way back in the day, toll bridges had men who would be in the thing and they have to take your money. So he goes up to the guy that's in the toll booth and he's got two revolvers in his hand and he points them at the guy and he's like, give me all your money. So he goes and robs this toll booth. So yeah, he basically stick him up, buddy. Give me all your money. He gets back in the car, runs back to the car with money. And he's like, we got to go. And he had just stolen like all the money from this toll booth driver and he takes off like a bat out of hell. Like he starts cruising down into the Oregon side because he had crossed over into Oregon. And he ends up passing by 2 police officers, motorcycle police officers who are kind of like sitting off to the side of the road. And he flies by them, which is what literally catches their attention. And they're like, yeah, something's going on. Well, one of the officers was like, in the middle of doing something with his bike. And so he's like, just go ahead and I'll try to catch up to you. And so this other motorcycle officer speeds up and he's like flipping on the sirens, trying to get his attention. Like he's not pulling over. He actually ends up chasing him for 3 miles. And again, it's not like a freeway at this time. It's just like a road, right? So it's not like what you would envision current roads today would be. It's literally just like a road.
But also 3 miles. Whoa.
But they're 3 miles.
3 miles for back then was probably.
I mean, that's a long police chase though. If you're being chased by a cop, 3 miles is actually quite a long time to be driving.
I guess.
And so the officer ends up getting kind of fed up with it. So instead of staying behind him, he pulls up next to him. He like gets up next to him and he's like shouting at him like, you need to pull over, like you need to pull over. Well, Giles decides at that point that that's the time where he's going to take the revolver and shoot the officer and kills him. The bike falls, the bike goes flying, and the officer pretty much
you really fucked up now.
Pretty much was dead instantly. According to Giles' girlfriend, she said that he was like, what did I just do? Oh my God, what did I just do? He didn't mean to kill him, whatever. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. Obviously, this triggers like a whole ass thing. And they literally are, okay, we need to do like a massive manhunt and investigation because we need to find out who this man is that just killed one of our police officers. The problem is he had buried his guns. Like after this happened, he literally found a location. He got out, buried his guns. His car was untraceable, because I'm assuming either it was stolen or he just like, they had no way to like really register what kind of a car it was in the moment when the whole like speed chase went down. And it kind of, for a couple of days, they were like, we don't even know, like, we don't know where to look. We don't know where to start. We don't even know how to do this. All we know is that one of our officers is dead and we need to find out who did this. Well, only when a man who happened to be like walking through this park area, he actually finds this wig and this mustache. He like on the ground. He like looks at it and he's like, weird. And so he brings it to the police because they knew that, or he, you know, at this point, the public knew that somebody wearing a wig and a mustache, or at least their assumption was a wig and mustache, had killed this police officer because they got the information obviously from the toll booth guy, right? So this whole thing, part of their investigation. So he brings it to the police and they actually find mixed in somehow, some way in the wig, they find a laundry slip within this disguise. And a laundry slip, they look at it and it has a laundry facility. So they go to this laundry facility and they're like, hey, this came from you. Can you tell us who these clothes belong to? And they're like, oh yeah, it's John Giles. This is his apartment number. So they go to the apartment, knock, knock, knock. They show up and Giles actually tells Carlson when the police are there that he's not really concerned because they show up. They arrest both of them, actually, because they show up and they're literally there. And he tells his girlfriend, he's like, don't even worry about it. They literally have nothing. They have nothing. They have nothing at all on me or you. There's nothing that would actually link us to whatever they're trying to charge us with. What he really meant by that was when I go into the police station and they sit me down and talk to me, I'm going to tell them that I was home all night long that night and that the girlfriend borrowed his car. And she must have done this.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what he tells them. And he tells them, like, I didn't use my car that night. Now, my girlfriend was using my car that night, but I was sick. I was at home sick. And then he also told them that the next morning when he got up, he went to the car and he was like, the car was so dirty that I had to wash the car. And it was the second time that week I'd had to wash it because of how many times she'd taken it. So this is what he tells them. Now, they go to Carlson, his girlfriend, and they're like, so here's what's going on. And she's fucking pissed.
Rightfully so.
Right. And she's like, no. First of all, she's like, that is not what happened. She said, here's what happened. So she tells him exactly what happens. And then she said, and not only that, let me tell you what his plan has been this whole time. So she tells them the whole plan about kidnapping. She tells them about the letter that he wrote. Every single thing she told them. She said, the only reason I stuck around with him is because I really thought I loved this man and I was tricked into loving him because when I first met him, he was just so charming. And when I moved in with him 3 weeks later, it was different. And he held a gun to me many a times and threatened that if I were to leave, that would be the end of me. And so she's telling them this. Obviously, they believe her story because that just makes more sense, especially because the toll booth guy can say, well, it was a man who robbed me, not a fucking woman. And oh, wait, hey, that guy kind of looks like the guy. Let's put the fucking disguise on him and let's see if I recognize him, right? So in January of 1919, he is convicted, but he is sent to the state penitentiary now in Salem, Oregon. Okay, so now he's in Salem, Oregon State Penitentiary, and he's in jail for murder because they literally charge him with murdering this police officer. During his time in the Oregon prison, he was actually like super quiet, and he served as what they called a trustee in the prison. Now, a trustee is an inmate who is considered trustworthy, and the inmate is allowed special privileges. He also made money while in prison writing short stories for a magazine called Pulp. Now, Pulp was a fiction magazine. They would publish fiction stories. So like I looked up what Pulp was, and it's not quite comic books, but they're stories like a comic book, but like without the pictures. And so he would write for that. He would make money that way. And he was also an editor for the prison's magazine too. So he was very living his life, right? Again, he went in 1919. In 1934, Giles escapes from the Salem Penitentiary. And he later states that I wrote fiction for magazines and the sources of my literary creation dimmed. I felt the need for new scenes and new faces. A sense of terrible futility came over me, so I went over the wall.
This guy fucking... I question this motherfucker's IQ now.
Now, okay, so here he is. He escapes out of prison in May of 1935. So the next year after he escapes, he ends up joining 6 other people on jumping onto another mail train, snail mail train.
Yes, I know.
And it's the Denver Rio Grande mail train in Salt Lake City, Utah. So now he's in Utah and he joins 6 other people to jump onto this train and rob the train. Now, the plan does not go as he had hoped, and he is captured along with the other people, and he is tried and he is sentenced to 28 years in prison. He is sent to McNeil Island, which there's a prison there, and shortly after being there, he is actually he is sent to Alcatraz in August of 1935. So he's only on McNeil Island for a couple months, and then they send him to Alcatraz because they look at him and go, you've already escaped from a Salem penitentiary for murder. We're not playing with you anymore.
And let's be honest, with it being the justice system too, it's like if you murder somebody, you get your punishment. If you murder a cop, though,
oh yeah,
you get 10 times worse.
Right. So they do. They send him to Alcatraz. Now, as soon as he gets into Alcatraz, he actually puts in for a transfer. He requests a transfer out of Alcatraz. Now, he says that Alcatraz is designated as a place for the irreclaimable incorrigibles, people. And he claimed that he would absolutely behave if he was just sent to a federal prison instead.
Bullshit,
like,
motherfucker.
Sir, you also killed somebody.
And you escaped
Exactly. What are you talking about? So he said that he did not belong with these desperate gangsters of people that were on Alcatraz, and that he wasn't like them. And the transfer was ultimately denied. So he was forced to stay there.
It makes me wonder if there was any transfer that got approved. I
Probably
highly
not.
doubt it.
I highly doubt it.
They probably looked at their transfers and said, you're here for a reason.
Right.
So
all the inmates on Alcatraz are given jobs. And Giles' job was actually to sweep the docks, unload military laundry, and tend to the flowers that bordered the pathway that you could walk up.
Yep.
Now, what I mean by military laundry is because Alcatraz was its own island, they would have military ships that would stop in, and basically they would stay there for like a night. And they would get all their laundry and shit done.
I remember reading about that when we went there.
Yes, so that he was part of that crew. Now, for 10 years, Giles had this job of doing this. And what they would do is he would go, well, first they would line up when the boat would come in. They would dock the boat. Then they would bring in the laundry. They would bring all the laundry off of the boat. And then they would take the laundry and actually scan it through like these things so that they made sure there was nothing in it at like metal or things like that. And then it would be taken to the laundry facilities and taken care of. Well, he was part of that whole team. Now, then after their laundry would come in, he would go onto the boat and he would sweep the boat. He'd sweep the ramp. So this is what he did. Now, for those 10 years, he was slowly but surely stealing pieces of the military uniforms. This included army ties, socks, shirts, and pants, a khaki Army overseas cap, an Army field jacket, 3 sets of official dog tags, 1 man's temporary pass, 4 more people's temporary passes, and 6 blank temporary passes. And the passes are what you needed to show to be able to get on and off the island. Multiple different shoulder patches, including chevron patches, which are like the arrows. He had stolen a gray flashlight with batteries, a gold fountain pen, a small medicine bottle with ink, a small memo book, a map of San Francisco and the Bay Area, and a map of Marin County. Now, on July 31st, 1940.
First of all, bravo.
Over 10 years.
That's a lot of shit.
Yeah. He would pocket it.
Bravo.
So he would pick a piece
Especially
of
those
clothing.
Bigger items.
So they said what it said was that he would pick a piece of one thing, and he would tuck it into his, because they would wear like these coveralls because they were doing dirty work, and he'd stick it in there and just leave it in there. And then when it was time to go back to his cell, he'd just take it and hide it. July 31st, 1945. Giles reports to the dock as usual for his day. When he first gets there, he kind of like looks around, nobody's looking. So he like slips out of view to where nobody can see him. And he actually puts on every single piece of the uniform that he has collected over the 10 years. And then he puts his coveralls back over his, like all of his jail clothes are back over, or this military uniform. At 10 a.m., this boat comes in, it docks, and it's carrying soldiers. He does the norm. They first line everybody up before they can undo anything from the dock. They line everybody up and they do a head count to make sure all the prisoners are there. And then they go to work. So he's standing in line for them to do the head count. Well, then they go on board to start taking off the laundry, and Giles actually slips below the dock. So there's the dock. He went under the dock. There's like walkways on the boat that were under where the dock was. So he slipped under the dock. He takes off the coveralls and he puts a hat on, and then he climbs back up into the ship through like a freight hatch and is on the ship now. And then he walks off the ship as if he's a officer or like a military person. Well, this military ship was only staying for a very short time. They literally were staying long enough to, the men got off that needed to get off, and then they gave their laundry, and then they basically were going to get ready to leave again. Like, this was a super short trip. Then this whistle blows. Well, when they blow this whistle, the whistle that they blow is for the prisoners that work on the dock to all line back up for prisoner head count, because the boat at the same time is being it's being cast off. So they basically line everybody up
to be able to make sure they don't escape. Right.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I sat there and I was like, well, why wouldn't you wait until after, like, they let the boat leave, and as the boat's leaving, they want everybody to line back up so they can count the prisoners. Like, why wouldn't you wait?
Count the prisoners first.
And then let them, yeah. So at the same time,
because that makes too much sense.
Of course. So at the same time they're doing this prisoner head count, the boat is leaving. It's gone. It's already pulled away from the dock, and it's driving away. The boat and Giles is on the boat. So he's on the boat. And he ends up getting confronted by a corporal that's on the boat. The corporal says, I was a little weary of him because he had on a military uniform, but his pieces of military uniform didn't match. Like, they weren't the ones that you would typically put together. So he questions him, and he says, you know, hey, like, who are you? And Giles is like, oh, hi. Yeah, sorry. I'm just a lineman. And now during this week that this happened, they had linemen coming back and forth to the island every day on these ships, because there were some issues with their communication centers and things, and they had people coming to work on them. So he tells him, oh, I'm a lineman. I'm just coming off the island. I've been here all week. I'm just catching a ride to get back over to the San Francisco side. And he's like, and then he takes out like this pad of paper and pen, and he starts writing in it like he's trying to jot something down, and the corporal just kind of lets him go. Well, obviously, as soon as they do the head count, they notice that there is a prisoner missing, and they notice that it is Giles who's missing. So the warden immediately boards a boat and is like, we're going to San Francisco, because we have a fucking feeling this guy is either on that boat or he jumped in the fucking water, because, you know, they're already searching the island. But then the warden's like, I'm heading to San Francisco, because we both know, because we've been there, that's the island you're going to find him on. And so he heads there on his boat. Now, they also radio the ship, and they tell the ship, like, do not let anybody off of that boat until we are there. We have a feeling that there is an inmate stowaway on your boat somewhere. And he's like, and they said the warden's on his way. When he gets there, we'll deal with it. Well, the warden actually gets to San Francisco literally at the same time the ship is actually being roped to the dock, because obviously he's on a bigger boat. So he gets there. He tells them, okay, line them up, line everybody, find every person on this boat, line them up. And he walks down the line and stares at every single person. And he gets to Giles, who's wearing his hat, and he fucking looks at him. He's like, Jesus Christ. And he like slaps these cuffs on his hands. He's like, let's go. And so he takes him. So off he goes. So he is literally back. So he leaves. Okay, remember, the boat showed up at 10 a.m. and he was back on Alcatraz in his cell at noon.
Damn.
So he wasn't gone for very long, and he never even made it off the boat. Now, Giles was actually put into solitary confinement because of this. And if you remember, solitary is cell block D, and it's fucking scary. So he was there, and he was interviewed by the FBI because they wanted to know, like, how the fuck did you make it, first of all, off the island? And how the fuck did you make it off alive? Because pretty much everybody else who's ever escaped has died. To which he said, It's not in my book to tell the officers anything because I don't want to injure the chances that another prisoner may have of escaping if he can plan and make it. So he was like, I'm not telling you what the fuck I did because if one of my prison cellmates or prisoner friends wants to escape, I'm not going to ruin their chances. Snitches get stitches, bro. So he knew the code. So that's good. He didn't tell. So that's good. He felt that it was up to the prison to keep him in, and it's up to him to find a way to get out.
I fucking can't with this guy.
Okay, so here's the side note. He had a very similar idea about himself that Nathan Leopold did. He felt that he was Superman. He deemed himself Superman, and that he was going to perform the perfect kidnappings and be untouchable. He also held Nietzsche's word at a very high standard, which is exactly what Nathan Leopold did, which, by the way, this was not planned. The fact that this is back to back is like this guy was just meant to be talked about today. So that's the link. You already caught on to it, though. He thought he was better than everybody else, smarter than everybody else, and was going to be perfect at his crime.
Giles, they do say sometimes when you're extremely smart, you're too smart for your own good.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly what it is. So Giles does end up spending 3 years in D-block solitary confinement. That's a long time. For those of you who have never been to Alcatraz, the solitary confinement is no fucking joke. They have cells open that you can go into, but it's not your typical cell. You walk into the cell and then there's like a solid door that closes behind you and it is pitch fucking black. And he spent 3 years in that place. He was also given the worst job possible when he went back into Gen Pop. So he spends 3 years in solitary and then he goes back and he's given the worst job possible, which is the incinerator detail, which is probably terrible because you have to it's hotter than shit and all kinds of stuff. He also forfeited 3,000 days of good time credits and he was sentenced to another 3 years in Alcatraz for his escape attempt. Now, Giles is only one of 2 inmates that actually escaped off the island and lived to tell about it. Not meaning he escaped for good, but meaning that he is one of 2 people. 16 tried to escape. Only 2 ever made it to the other side of the island alive. The rest of them died some of them died at sea. So there's 2, maybe 3 that they're we don't know whatever happened to them, but we're pretty sure they were not murdered, that they were eaten by sharks or drowned. But the ones that they know for sure, he is one of 2 that ever actually escaped off Alcatraz and lived to tell about it. Now in 1952, he is actually sent back to the prison in Oregon, probably to serve time for his murder. That would be my guess, because it didn't say why he was sent back. Because at first I thought, because Alcatraz closed, but Alcatraz doesn't close until 1963 or 5. So it's not because Alcatraz was closing, but he did serve quite a long time. I mean, you figure he served 17 or 18 years in Alcatraz. That's a long fucking time in Alcatraz. That's how long he served there. Isn't that crazy? So he serves his time for that. He ends up getting sent back to prison in Oregon. And 2 years after getting back into prison in Oregon, so in 1954, he's actually paroled. He's paroled. And it was said that the prison officials had said that the years had mellowed him out and he had just become a gentle old soul kind of type person. And so they're like, yeah, you don't really need to be in prison, which I'm like, what? John Giles died in 1979 when he was 77 years old. He actually was featured in a short documentary about his time on Alcatraz because there was some movie, Point Blank is what it was called. And it was coming out. And the director of Point Blank thought it would be cool to have a couple of little short videos that would be before the movie or something. And he was one of them. And it was a documentary and it was talking to him about his time on Alcatraz. Because at the end of the day, yes, he murdered one person. But his story's pretty interesting because he spent a long time on Alcatraz, escaped from a different prison, right? So, and then he gets out in 1954 and doesn't commit a single crime after that. So it's he really did mellow out. Okay, so maybe he was maybe really the shooting of the police officer was not intended. It would be considered what we would probably call manslaughter because it was in the moment type thing. So, okay, I can see it. So he was interviewed. And this is what he had to say about his time that he spent in Alcatraz. He said, everything was so strict. A man with a long time, he's got only one thought that he wants to escape, that he needs to escape. You think it's the end of your life. You don't want to die in prison. You have that obsession. That's all you think about. It fills your waking hours from morning to night. That's John Giles. I can't.
What's interesting is when you go on the spoiler, when you do the Alcatraz tour, he's not even one that they talk about.
I think he is, actually.
Is he?
I think he is, because
I don't remember.
They do talk
him.
about a lot of the. Well, he's in the whole. There's one whole section where they talk about the people who escaped. He's in there for sure, because he's the one of 16. But the fact that he's one of 2 that lived, I'm pretty sure that they talked about him. But it was just like, this is why I like these ones, because I'm not mad at this. I'm not mad at this story. He was a career criminal. He did bad stuff. He served quite a bit of time in jail. He served a lot of time at Alcatraz. He gets out of jail, lives his life, moves on and does whatever the fuck he's going to do. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm going to say something that this can make or break it right here. It would have been kind of cool. Like, tell me it would have been kind of cool if he was like your grandpa.
No.
And you could have been like, Grandpa, tell me about your time at Alcatraz.
No.
Yes. Why would that not be cool? It would be cool if you had like a relative. I understand he killed somebody, so that's terrible. But like, also,
I don't even give a shit about that.
He just robbed. That's all he did. It could have been worse. I mean, he tried to kidnap. He wasn't planning on killing. Like, I want to know this man. I can't because he's dead. But it's like, damn, tell me about your time on Alcatraz. And he'd probably be like, fuck you, lady. I don't want to talk to you about my time on Alcatraz. Probably.
Nah, if you mellowed out, he'd be like, oh, yeah, let me tell you all about it.
Like, well, come sit with Grandpa and let me tell you what it was like. I thought it was interesting. I think it's cool because Alcatraz is one of those places that there was not, it's not like there were thousands of inmates ever on Alcatraz. So, like, it's really cool.
I vote that they spruce it back up and put that bitch back together.
I do too. I actually think that if they could have the funds to just like basically knock down everything about the prison because it's falling apart and redo a prison, even a smaller, make it small, make it only hold like 100 inmates and put the fucking worst of the worst. Although, you know what? I say that now.
I mean, they've got San Quentin over there, and Quentin has some pretty bad.
Yeah, but San Quentin's just a normal prison. They just
That's true.
Put a lot of, but I'm saying like put people out there
like Charles Manson, Ted Bundy.
Well,
like
Charles Manson and Ted Bundy are dead.
No shit.
And I'm talking about, well, yeah, I guess. But then I think about it like this. I have not watched it yet, but there is a TV show on the Peacock channel, like on the Peacock streaming service that I want to watch. It's called the something Hunt. And
yeah.
And that is
where they
what
escape
did.
from prison.
Yes.
Oh, I'm gonna watch that.
So
show.
that's what they did is they created. I was reading about it. They created a prison. So in this show, they created a prison that was like
the worst.
It was
of the
like
worst.
underground.
Yep.
And it housed the worst of the worst, which
and
they're like all serial killers.
Yep.
And then it blows up and a bunch of them escape. And now they have to go find him. And I'm like, but see, that would probably be what would really happen if it was an Alcatraz.
Yeah,
There'd be like a fucking escape. And then all of a sudden it's like, goddamn, there they go. So, and then we couldn't go. We couldn't go visit and see what there is on Alcatraz. So if it was like really a prison, we wouldn't be able to go see. And
I'm not saying they need to reboot Alcatraz. I'm saying they need to make another
island,
Alcatraz.
another island.
Literal Alcatraz too.
Yeah, I think I've always thought that Alcatraz was brilliant because even 16 people attempting to escape, the fact that only 2 were ever really successful, that tells you everything you need to know about this prison.
Well, and even then, one of the 2 went back to the I don't know what happened to the other one, but because wasn't one of the ones that they didn't know?
They didn't find him, or I don't know. Why did it say one? No. I think everybody who's escaped, nobody has ever successfully escaped from Alcatraz to their knowledge because the 2 that lived were brought back. And the 3 or 2 that escaped, they never were found. And they were never found.
Technically, they could have.
They technically could have, but the thing was, we
were on a ferry.
Yeah.
On those waters. There's no fucking way.
Not only the current of the water, but the temperature of the water, because it doesn't get warm. And it's shark-infested water. And it's long fucking...
Yeah.
It's a long... There's no way you're swimming that far.
No.
You're probably drowning.
Or even if you float.
Because with the current alone, you're not just swimming, you're swimming against the current.
Well, more than likely, you're also probably escaping at night when the water is
When
even
it's freezing.
fucking colder.
Yeah.
And just the wind. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way people survive.
There's no way you could swim it. Maybe a boat, but there's no way you could swim it. But even a boat, they had done on Mythbusters, I think, they had done a thing because it was rumored that they had escaped on a boat. So they literally reenacted what the escape would have been, and the current would have taken them nowhere near any of the islands that they needed. They would not have reached land the way that they were supposed to. So that's what the whole problem is it just doesn't make much sense. That's why Alcatraz was considered the inescapable prison, because it was surrounded by shark infested waters with really bad currents and crazy cold water. I don't know, but yeah, nobody was ever that they could show was ever successful at escaping and living their life. So anyways, that was John Giles. I thought he was, again, it's kind of lighthearted when I do the older ones. I kind of like them because they're not as morbidly And again, he murdered somebody, but I don't think he planned on murdering him. Anywho, that's the name of episode 25. So if you like what you hear and you like what you're listening to, please don't forget to follow us. And again, like we said in the beginning, if you have suggestions, please, please, please email us, DM us, whatever. I would love to hear suggestions. Even if it's a serial killer, it's just if you do a serial killer, it's going to be on Fatal Blend instead. So this is probably the part where I'm just going to say, catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.